Marcus Lamb. Marcus Lamb, who is a Christian broadcaster. He's also an anti-vaxxer. He died at 64 years old after contracting COVID. He's no longer with us. His son called it a spiritual attack. A spiritual attack. Again, anti-vaxxer, spoke out against the vaccine, and his son said he died due to a spiritual enemy. I know you're a God-fearing woman, Amisha Cross. What are your thoughts on this?
The way certain evangelicals can try to flip the Bible to fit whatever script they want is always not only contradictory, but hilarious to me. We know that her husband could have still been here, amongst us all, had he just followed the simple science and all of the, ease of access to get the COVID-19 vaccine. The Lord, he looks after fools, but at the end of the day, when you purposely decide that you're not going to follow, common sense, and also go and tell your whole congregation multiple times over that they don't need to have the vaccine either. I mean, the ends justify the means in this case. It's sad, but his wife needs to accept the fact that her husband made a bad decision, and these are the fruits of his decision making.
Keith, you may not know this, but Marcus Lamb allegedly, reportedly, he had to pay back $3.9 million of a PPP loan when it was allegedly revealed he had purchased a private jet after securing the loan. Allegedly. What are your thoughts on the passing of Mr. Marcus Lamb?
Allegedly. Yeah, 2 weeks after he received this PPP loan, his church went out and bought a private jet. He claimed there is no connection between the two, but he paid back that $3.9 million in government money he received. Clearly, he was fleecing the government and fleecing his congregation, fleecing the government by misusing the money if he did misuse the money, or even if he didn't purposely use that money. The fact that he was taking money from the government while he had the money to buy a private jet suggested that he was misusing the government resources and fleecing the government. And secondly, he was fleecing his congregation. The fact that people are paying to be a part of this church, to be a part of his ministry, and then the pastor and all of these other congregation leaders are flying around on vacation, posting on Instagram and social media about their vacations, and then denying it later on. It shows just what hypocritical gang they all are. So the fact that he died of COVID after spending time fueling conspiracy theories and denying the efficacy of vaccines, it shows that these Republicans and conservatives and so-called Christians are willing to die for their stupidity. But, I have to say, as dumb as I think this is, and I don't really have a lot of sympathy for people who do dumb things and cause their own deaths, to be honest. I have sympathy for people who died, but he forced himself to die by refusing to follow public health guidance. And I have to give him credit for one thing, though. At least he's not a hypocrite like Tucker Carlson and all the other people at Fox News who are complaining about vaccines, and they're taking the vaccines. At least he talked the talk and walked the walk. He didn't actually take it, and he didn't believe in it. So I have to give him credit for consistency. A foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, of course, but I have to give him credit for that compared to some of the other hucksters that are out there.
Risking it all.
You're right, exactly. You know what's interesting to me is that I wonder, because he was a big televangelist. I mean, he was huge. He's been around for I think his church was founded in 1981. How many other people did Marcus Lamb influence who may have lost their life because of COVID, who may have gotten really sick because of COVID, who may be a COVID long hauler? How many other people, because of his irresponsible rhetoric, how many other families did he hurt because he is an influencer? And that, to me, is really the sad part about it. That, I hear you, Keith, as far as sticking to his guns, and he obviously did. But isn't it sad that that kind of following, that kind of impact, people are giving you their money, you're getting a multi-million-dollar PPP loan because of how you allegedly reach out to Christ and you're some kind of connection and you're a televangelist and you speak in the whatever. And people take your advice more serious than a doctor, than a scientist.
Clay, if they believe the front half of that, then nothing is not that, large of a leap to believe that they would go along with not having to take the vaccine or the conspiracy theories. Anybody who believes that this random televangelist who is fleecing folks for their money somehow has a direct connection to the Lord and can solve your problems through his direct connection to the Lord is probably that his base of viewers, followers, people who send him cash are pretty much lost anyway. They're going to listen to whatever message he has to say because they've been doing it for years now. The term drink the Kool-Aid. These are individuals who literally are doing that on a daily basis. Nothing he couldn't have said anything that they wouldn't have done or believed.
I can't. Go ahead, Keith. Go ahead.
Somebody once said years ago, nobody ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of the public.
Right.
Here's a clear example of that. People are stupid. Not everybody, but there's a lot of dumb, gullible people out there. And I don't fault them for being dumb and gullible. I fault the snake oil salesmen and hucksters out there who take advantage of their dumbness and their gullibility. So, ignorance is not a crime, but taking advantage of the ignorance should be.
It really should be. And what funny thing to me, I know there's some folks out there who follow televangelists, but y'all still paying attention to televangelists? Didn't you learn from Jimmy Swaggart? Didn't you learn from Jim Baker? Like these people still have.
Rod Parsley, Magi. There's so many people you can go down the list. They're still making a ton of money. They're still relevant.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of falling for trick stunts and a whole lot of foolishness, Dr. Oz is running for senator of Pennsylvania. I believe he lives in New Jersey, though.
New Jersey.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so he's running for senator of Pennsylvania.
He works at Columbia University in New York.
Yeah, New York, just fabulous. But he's running for senator of Pennsylvania. And where did he go for his first interview? He went to Sean Hannity. Yeah, that's where he went, to Sean Hannity. So listen to Dr. Oz talk about his vision for America, and I guess people who have lied when it comes to the coronavirus. Here's America's doctor, as he was once called. Listen to this.
So I want to serve America in its time of need. And I think I can do that by running for the U.S. Senate seat in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, Americans, and here's how I see it, Americans deserve better solutions. Doctors are about solutions. But instead, people with good ideas are shamed, they're silenced, they're bullied, they're canceled. You talk about it, Sean, all the time. And in medicine, if we cannot say what we see, people die, literally. That's why we always tell the patients the truth, because they'll respect us and we can deal with realities if we're honest with each other. So let me talk about COVID for a second, because as a physician, I really spent a lot of time trying to understand what went wrong. And the mistakes are emblematic of other issues that we're struggling with in our great country. Remember the phrase 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? That metastasized into this incredible authoritarianism, overreaching, that did not necessarily make us safer. People with yards, big yards, told people with no yards to stay indoors. That's where the virus was. Remember, they closed the parks. They shamed people about beaches.
I love that Dr. Oz says, what went wrong? What went wrong with the coronavirus? We had a president in office who was lying about it, who was calling it a hoax, who said it'll be gone by April, who said get some disinfectant, who said get some bleach. That's what went wrong. And then he talks about cancel culture. Cancel culture. That is the new talking point. I'm going to talk about cancel culture because from politicians to celebrities, that is the new talking point. But Keith, I know you liked Sean Hannity saying that he was a Reagan conservative, but he's a Make America Great Again conservative, and so is Dr. Oz. What are his chances in Pennsylvania, Keith?
Well, that interview was so problematic.
Oh, wait, Keith, there you go.
That interview was so problematic on so many different levels. The whole idea that Dr. Oz, who is this Columbia physician and lives in New Jersey, his own television was made famous by Oprah, is somehow an oppressed white man and that white men in general are oppressed when they're 29% of the population but control 95% of the levers of power in our country is preposterous. The idea that he's concerned about making sure that we do the right thing and find out what went wrong in the handling of the pandemic is preposterous, because as you said, Donald Trump was what went wrong in the handling of the pandemic, and he's still supporting Donald Trump, along with Sean Hannity, who calls himself a Trump conservative. And then thirdly, the idea that he has a chance to win, I can't answer that. But he's clearly running for the primary and not running for the general election. The primary base of the Republican Party is overwhelmingly right-wing and out of its mind. Somebody is ringing my doorbell. I don't know who it is. The primary base of the Republican Party is right-wing, out of its mind, Trump supporters. And he's got to appeal to that base in order to win the primary. But that's exactly the wrong way to win a general election race in that state. But I have to give full disclosure because, as you know, my good friend Malcolm Kenyatta is running in the Democratic primary for the Senate race in Pennsylvania, and I'm supporting him both publicly and financially. And I shudder to think of how far down the rabbit hole we're going to go with these conspiracy theorists who are being elected to office, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Lauren Boeberts, and now Dr. Oz, who's also promoting hydroxychloroquine and things like that. What is the Republican Party? What does the Republican Party even represent today, other than a bunch of kooks and liars and hucksters and racists?
Amisha, your thoughts, your Democratic strategy.
That's a lot. So what's happening here with Dr. Oz isn't surprising. We knew that there were going to be some pseudo celebrities who jumped into the race because after Donald Trump basically bust the ocean wide open when it came to people with no political experience, but who had some capital and some bits of fame, it became the posh thing to do. I was surprised Matthew McConaughey finally decided he wasn't going to do it. So now we have Dr. Oz, who has been, disclaimer, has multiple lawsuits against him for the lies he's told medically, as well as the funds he's taken from various pharmaceutical companies to push their drugs on his show. It's very interesting that this guy, who is known to be basically a charlatan in his own right as a doctor, but also someone who can say, in the clip you played a moment ago, can basically try to act like he didn't know what went wrong with COVID-19. You're a doctor. It's very frustrating to hear him basically utilize the alphabet soup of conservative talking points around COVID-19, around cancel culture. These are things that he knows conservative bases bite on, specifically the Trump base. And he's going to need that base to come out in the Pennsylvania Republican primary to even be able to have room to walk. So I think that at this point, he's trying to throw anything at the wall to see what sticks. With that being said, Fox News is the home of all things crazy, ignorant, and incorrect. So he went to the right spot to push his ridiculousness. But I also have to, throw a little support behind Oprah here, because Oprah distanced herself from Dr. Oz a while ago after all the lawsuits and the craziness came out about what he was doing and the monies he was taking to push a lot of drugs that really weren't the types of things you should be taking for what they were being promoted for on his show. But with all of that said, this is a guy who is trying to ride the wave of Donald Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes against January 6th. I wouldn't be surprised if he stands behind the anti-Muslim, the anti-Islamic rhetoric that we're seeing, purported throughout the Republican Party at this point. He's going to do whatever it takes to try to make it out of that primary. And because the Pennsylvania primary is very, very heavily Republican and heavily Trump Republican, he is going to become as Trumpy as he can over the next few months.
I have to say he forgot one thing. He forgot to include critical race theory, because clearly critical race theory is what caused COVID. And that's the reason why we have 700,000 people who died.
Right. I'm sure he'll get to that. I'm sure he'll get to critical race theory and defund the police and woke culture and woke supremacy. Yeah. Maybe Tim Scott will cotton to Congress. Tim Scott will campaign for him. The whole bit. I will say this though.
Like Herschel Walker, he's a carpetbagger. Herschel Walker lives in Texas, running for Georgia, and here's Dr. Oz living in Jersey, running in Pennsylvania. They don't give a crap about any of these rules. They just make whatever rules work for them. Meanwhile, Barack Obama, born in the United States, he's not eligible to run, according to them. These people kill me with inconsistency and hypocrisy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And what I will say, I could be wrong, but let's say Dr. Oz does win the Republican primary. Let's say he does win it. I think what that might do, first of all his receipts are going to be pulled, but that might actually really incentivize, I could be wrong, Democratic voters in the general primary for Pennsylvania. So that might, I could see Democratic voters being so disgusted and saying, you know what, we're going to show all the way out. Because these
if the
midterms
Voting
are
Rights
crucial.
Act, if the Voting Rights Act comes through,
Well, there's
if
that.
we see more legislation, because at the end of the day, we saw how Trump acted with Pennsylvania last year. I don't think that that's going to change for Republicans in 2022 or 2024. The assault on voting rights is real, and you can organize as much as you want. It's hard to out-organize white supremacy, especially when it's codified in law.
And remember that Trump, quote unquote, won Pennsylvania in 2016 by 44,000 votes.
Yeah,
It's even though it's considered a blue state in presidential elections when you have a huge turnout, when you have these off-year elections, there's no guarantee that it's going to vote that way. And so he has, he's seeking to replace Republican Senator Pat Toomey. So there's no guarantee they won't elect another Republican because this is an off-year election. And it's an election when Democrats aren't expected to do well next year because of all the other headwinds that they face. So there's no guarantee that this is going to play out the way anybody thinks it will.